More people are becoming more open to allyship, inclusivity, diversity. So that's something really important.
What should a business owner do? Now, what tips can you give them?
Zero trust architecture is basically you are suspicious of everything. Make sure that you are suspicious of what information is going out, what information is coming into the organization.
Delighted to have Masuma Shariff, a consultant in architecture and security from Advania UK. Masuma, thank you very much for coming in today. Delighted to have you. We're going to be talking about AI and cybersecurity and the impact and consideration small business enterprises need to have. But can we just start with a little bit about yourself and your background, and then we can just launch in from there.
Thank you so much for having me. So I am currently working at Advania as a consultant, where I more focus around the compliance and data governance part of it. So there's different solution areas. For example, there's identity and access management and so on. So how I found out I wanted to do cybersecurity was before I started applying for universities, which was a month before the high school graduation. I kind of was a bit confused about what I wanted to do. My brother also did cybersecurity, so I kind of took on from him because I saw how much he was enjoying it. So I thought, why not give it a shot? And before I knew it, I went into university, and my first semester I was so confused because everyone around me was so technically, they knew a lot technically, whereas I was coming from the complete bottom. So I had to build up my knowledge from complete zero, and then slowly I accumulated that in the sense that I have thankfully given several public speaking talks, and I've also given a TEDx talk that focused around my community back home in Tanzania and how we used technology to help upskill the women in our community. So it has been a rough journey, but at the end of the day, it's all about how you approach the challenge and kind of grow yourself more as a person.
Challenging but inspiring, not only for you but for others.
Exactly. Yeah.
So in terms of now in your role, what are you seeing in terms of AI and then cybersecurity? And as a small business owner whose sole focus is to grow the business in terms of revenue and make it commercially viable, they may not be thinking about the security aspects. So what are you seeing in your current role?
In my current role, we get some people in their organization that don't know what data they have at all. And I think data is the most important thing that you should know about in your organization, especially if it includes client information or even customer or your own employees' information. So this kind of ties into the foundational knowledge about cybersecurity. So this would be the CIA Triad, and it's kind of a triangle, and it focuses on confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So confidentiality would mean that is your information hidden? So it's only to make sure that certain people have access to that particular information only when they need to. The second one is integrity. Is the person sharing the information the person you think it is? So this kind of ties in with certain cyber attacks that happen. For example, phishing. You will think that the CEO is actually sending you a link to open up, but that is not the CEO. That is actually a malicious cyber attacker, and they want to steal your information. So that would be integrity. And then the availability part of it would be, is your information or are your systems and servers running as they need to be? So you don't want a website or an application to have downtime. For example, the whole CrowdStrike issue, that caused a global outage. There were even flights delays, and some people could not even pay with card, and they had to use cash because that was a whole availability outage. So the CIA Triad is something that companies need to focus on as a whole, and that also ties in with the data that your company has.
I think you mentioned phishing, and it's become very sophisticated. Could you kind of share what you know about that space right now?
Sure. So at the moment, people are noticing that attackers are becoming more careful in the way that they craft these emails. So they will monitor people. So it's something called reconnaissance, if I'm pronouncing that correct, but it's basically when you found out you find out as much as possible about your attacker. So in this case, for example, I could go on your LinkedIn, or I could find out your email through your LinkedIn or by just a simple Google search, and I can mimic someone from your network, for example, me. So you will probably get an email from Masuma Shariff, and it will be exactly how you'd think I would type based on what I also post online. So attackers are becoming smarter in the sense that they're able to almost manipulate themselves into the particular person they want to be because of AI, and they feed the information that they want the AI to bring back out.
So what can a small business owner do in order to mitigate for these type of risks?
So back when I was a security consultant intern in Malaysia, I was a part of something called phishing campaigns, and basically in these campaigns, they send out an email, a mass email. So basically, for context, the company will pay the organization to host a training session. And that training session, part of it is sending out mass emails to all customers, to all employees in that organization, and to make the email as reliable and as easy to understand as possible, and to make them think that, okay, it is someone within the company that is asking us for that information. So for example, it will be, hi, blank, this is an email from the HR, and we want you to click the link and fill in your information here. And sometimes what the links can do is mimic actual applications or websites that the company has. For example, we could fake a company link, and we could also fake a company website. And that is something that attackers do to get your information, because if you see the link looks suspicious, you obviously will know that, okay, I shouldn't click on that. But nowadays, attackers are becoming more smart. And as part of the training, we want them to be suspicious of any links and any applications that they're told to fill out. So this kind of relates back to zero trust architecture.
What have you seen in terms of, this is AI now being used, but in terms of cybersecurity, what are those trends that you've seen?
A huge trend that Microsoft and Amazon and almost all cloud service providers are pushing out is, as I mentioned, zero trust architecture, so ZTA. And zero trust architecture is basically you are suspicious of everything. Okay, so zero trust. And architecture is that your whole infrastructure or the whole company system is based on that. For example, if anyone logs into their email or to the company portal, you want to make sure that you verify everything. So in this case, you would use something called multi-factor authentication, otherwise known as MFA, and that basically gives you a prompt on your phone, and you have to verify that it is Masuma Shariff or Miraj actually signing in based on the prompt given on your phone. So that is something. And then another thing would be zero trust architecture also kind of makes sure that you are suspicious of what information is going out, what information is coming into the organization. So it's kind of based around verifying everything, making sure that you're governing almost everything that comes in and out of your organization. So that is definitely a trend we're seeing companies pick up and prioritize when they are building from complete scratch.
So how would a business owner take the necessary steps to get their company in a place where they are feeling safe and secure?
Yeah, so to feel safe and secure, obviously first, as I said, you need to know your data. So once you know your data, you can then govern and protect your data. So for example, with Microsoft, we have something called Microsoft Purview, and that is something that I work with a lot. And it's around the compliance side of data, so the governing part. So you need to make sure that your data in the company stays for a certain amount of time, because you don't want company data to stay forever, because once it stays forever in the organization, you kind of lose track of what information is floating around in the organization. Another thing would be the protection part. So that would be keeping certain labels on certain documents. So for example, if a document is labeled as confidential, then you don't want that document just going out to everyone and anyone. So it's directions like these that companies need to take. So firstly, they need to know data, they need to protect the data, and then they need to govern that particular data.
But it sounds like they need to work with people. If they don't have the skills in-house, they need to definitely seek out those skills in order to help them.
Yeah, I think that is something that people really don't prioritize, and that would be the cybersecurity of the company. And there's also a meme amongst other cyber consultants, the fact that the cybersecurity department budget only goes up after a particular attack happens on the system, and that is not good. Because the cybersecurity of your company needs to be a priority, because once there is a data leak, that ruins the whole credibility of your organization. A way to improve on that would be train your employees. So, for example, upskill your employees and encourage them to go out and do certain security certifications. For example, there is a complete beginner certificate called the SC900, and that is something that Microsoft gives, which is called the Security Compliance and I think Governance certification. And then there's also the AWS Security Associate. So there's a lot of different certifications out there that help upskill you as a person.
And are these free resources or are they paid for?
So the resources online are free.
Okay.
But the certificate to take the exam you have to pay for. But from my understanding, if you attend the Microsoft Learning Days, then you get 50% off. So that's almost a steal. So you get, I think, £50 you have to pay around. But I would say it's worth for an organization to pay £50 as compared to almost £1,000 just to remediate those particular issues.
Maybe we can get some of those links and put them in the chat at a later date to make them available. So in terms of, getting those skills in, getting the training, in terms of the makeup of kind of technical teams, you're a woman in tech. What are you doing in terms of encouraging others to get into the space?
Yeah, so recently I actually gave a talk at Manchester Digital, and it was around diversity, inclusion, and allyship. And I got to talk about my experience advocating for women in Tanzania and encouraging them to take up computer classes and English classes so that they can combine the two and deliver, good enough kind of information to the other people back home. So I would say that for women, especially, because I was one of the few women who did not know what I wanted to do in terms of tech, because it was not something that was introduced to me. So something important would be mentorship. Even if it's within an organization, try and make sure that you're mentoring and you're advocating for women within the department, because it can be intimidating to learn to put yourself out there, especially when you have imposter syndrome, which is the harsh reality. But I'm seeing that slowly change as more people are becoming more open to allyship, inclusivity, diversity. So that's something really important in my personal opinion.
But surely there's benefits to having a diverse set of teams within AI and cybersecurity from a company perspective.
100%, because I think that you get different perspectives, and that's something really important to have in any tech space. So, for example, one person will look at cybersecurity as merely just keeping your system safe, but what other people would see would be training your employees, or would be looking at more of the people side of it. So it's a mix of opinions and perspectives that makes the whole tech atmosphere amazing. And it's something that you continuously learn from. That's why we have online forums, we have online chat rooms, and that helps you get different perspective and ideas from people around you.
So in the kind of this AI, Gen AI innovation that's happening, it's rapid and it's, and it's only going to get more sophisticated and better. Would you say that it's important to be an individual or an organization that understands people and human behaviors as much as what the tech can do?
Yeah, because so people say that AI will replace humans, but that can't be further from the truth. It's actually the people that know how to use AI that will replace the people who don't know how to use AI. So knowledge and awareness around how to use certain AI platforms is extremely important. For example, for me, I cannot go a day without using Copilot, and it's so convenient because you can use it to summarize emails, even make presentation slides, even ChatGPT itself. You can use it to help coach you how to speak, how to improve your writing, and so on. So in those terms, I think companies need to be more open to using AI, and it's not something that will steal your job. It will only steal your job if you let someone else become better at you than you are at it.
So you talked about some of the Microsoft products that you use or that you specialize in.
Yeah.
Can you drill down into some of them just to help the audience understand, and myself actually, to understand what these do and how they can help?
Sure. So in my daily life, I am delivering more of the Microsoft Purview side of things, which is focused around Microsoft compliance and data governance. So that would be things like sensitivity labels, as I mentioned, marking certain documents a certain way, retention labels and policies, so how long data should stay in your company for, DLP, which is data loss prevention, so making sure that data is not randomly being shared with people outside your organization, because that's not something you want. Another example of other Microsoft products would be Microsoft Entra ID, which is more focused around the zero trust architecture of things. So that would be conditional access. So you want to be careful. Where are people signing in from? Is the person signing in actually who they are? So that would be multi-factor authentication, authenticity and all that. And then there's Microsoft Intune. So that's to do more with device configuration. That's something that I have limited knowledge in, but it's really interesting, and I hope to upskill myself more in that. And then we have more of the Microsoft Defender suite. So that covers almost a lot of things, and something famous that is under it is called Microsoft Sentinel. And Microsoft Sentinel is used for event and identity incidents management, So it's called an SIEM. So you kind of monitor security logs and what your system is doing. And an interesting part of that is Microsoft Copilot has actually integrated with the Microsoft Sentinel, Microsoft Entra, and Azure, and is soon branching out to more of those. And it's helping automate certain, practices. So, for example, what would be done manually, for example, the monitoring of thousands of logs that would probably take someone hours to do, is now being done in minutes or almost seconds, and you can find out how weak your organization or a client's organization is based on just a simple prompt.
Okay. And in the spirit of fairness, there are other products on the market available.
100%, yeah.
I just wanted to know specifically what you were working on and how you were using them. So in terms of a business, we've talked about training, we've talked about certification. Without giving away any confidential information whatsoever, what are you hearing and seeing from small business or SMEs, essentially, small medium enterprises? What are you able to share with us in terms of the real experiences and questions that people are asking? So
most people we've noticed are very premature in terms of their security, so data security, and most of them are purely new to the cloud security. So for example, most of them will still be using on-premises, whereas now we're using more cloud environment structures, right? So companies will come in and they have no idea of what they want. So what we will do, obviously, as consultants, is you help guide them and point them towards what would be the correct configurations or implementations that they can do to help secure their system and know information that is being shared outside, that is internally, and just to avoid a potential cyber attack from happening in the future.
And so in terms of next steps, then, what could a business owner, or what should a business owner do? What tips can you give them?
So firstly, I cannot stop emphasizing this point, but make sure you know what data is within your organization, because being blind to data that is being shared outside your organization is the main reason for why certain breaches happen and why attackers can easily gain I guess you could say, personal information that should only be available to that organization. And another thing would be invest in your employees, because it would rather that you teach people within your organization how to deal with certain cyber attacks or how to deal with certain cybersecurity foundational knowledges, as compared to getting someone from outside, because that employee will then be able to give back to the organization. And that's very important for me personally.
You know, you talked about your presentations, you've done some TEDx presentations. So what are you doing to help others around you in terms of getting more diversity in the tech space? And actually, you know, and where are you seeing that investment in you as well?
Yeah. So one way that I like to think I'm helping around in terms of advocacy and diversity would be, I am actually volunteering to teach people back home in Tanzania. So I deliver online classes and I teach them more about the Microsoft security fundamentals part of it, because that is something that I'm more well versed in. Another thing would be, I try and advocate for women in my organization. So I will encourage the other people or my other peers to go out for certain events or to get speaking opportunities, so that they can also upskill themselves as women and people within the tech space. And finally, for myself, I try to continuously keep on learning, because the funny thing is, Sammy actually said this before, but if you feel like you're comfortable in a place, then you're in the wrong place. You need to constantly feel uncomfortable, because then that means that you're growing as a person. And it's a good thing to be able to grow out of your shell and to connect with more individuals and network with others that are in other sectors of the tech space.
And just to confirm, that's Sami Ben Ali from Interactive Experiences and Technologies at Amazon.
Yes.
So in terms of your next steps and where the industry is going, where are you going to be focusing your time, and what do you think businesses should be really kind of zoned in on?
So I would say AI for sure. So I want to actually learn more about how to make my own AI system. So funnily enough, in university, I actually made an automated network intrusion detection system using deep learning models. And that was something that caught my interest, because back then AI was not really booming. So seeing it booming right now and seeing that that was something I did back in university kind of gives me hope in the fact that I could learn more from that. And I really want to go and kind of build that project a bit more, and hopefully in the future build more different AI focused projects basically.
For the audience listening, in terms of deep learning, that's an evolution of AI.
Yeah.
Could you just help describe that and help others understand exactly what that is?
Sure. So deep learning is when you train your models based on existing knowledge that is online. For example, I used denial of service network packets. So packets are basically information that is being shared on a network. So in my case, I used 3 different data sets, and then I trained that particular model, and my laptop was dying at that point because it eats up a lot of resources. And luckily right now, I think with especially Microsoft having come out with the quantum computing chip that has just come out, there is a chance that AI will become more bigger, I think more sophisticated, more straightforward in terms of what it can do. I had to keep training my model, and then from that I could get an output and then use the Python again that I used to train the model and get a graph output and see what was better about the network intrusion detection system, if that makes sense.
It does, but in terms of deep learning, I mean, that's where essentially the system is able to interrogate, investigate much further, deeper
Exactly.
than ever before.
Because in deep learning, it's more like you're feeding, it's like a pet almost. You're constantly feeding it so that it becomes better in terms of what it can give you for outputs. For example, if you use only one data set, as compared to using 5 different data sets, the 5 data sets will be so much better because you have a variety of data that you're feeding into that particular model. So the output you get will be more sophisticated. And
that's something that we are constantly talking about in terms of AI, Gen AI especially.
Exactly.
This is not. It's the starting point. It's not the end result. Yeah. It's working off everything that it's been fed.
Yeah.
Right. So in terms of and so just to finish off, then in terms of your next steps, and you were talking about how the industry was where it's heading. What do you see some of the major steps in cybersecurity with AI becoming so much more sophisticated?
Organizations are using AI a bit more to automate certain security features. For example, what would back then be done manually and take several hours is now being done in a mere few seconds. And that is something that companies need to immediately hop on. So you need to upskill your employees about the use of AI, make sure that your organization itself is using AI, and try to understand how you can better utilize that product as a whole, is what I would advise companies to do. So make sure that you're using AI, make sure you're training your employees, and make sure that as an organization, you also know what information is within your organization so that you can govern and protect that.
Thank you very much for your time today, Masuma. It's been a fascinating conversation and just lots of insight, especially for what small business, medium enterprises business owners need to be thinking about, but also in terms of how all of us need to be, in one way or another, versed and well-versed in artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. Thank you so much for making the time to come in.
Thank you for having me.